guys, and welcome back to the podcast. Today we have Mike Nicholson. He's a sports nutritionist from Blackpool in England. Mike, thanks a million for jumping on. Do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, hi guys, thanks for listening. So, just completed my MSc, my Master's degree in Sports Nutrition, focused the studying on creatine and strength development, and now we're looking to move on forward and do a PhD in metabolic biology. And we're just going to have a little chat today just about a few little sports nutrition things, a few little things how your listeners can maybe utilise, make a little changes and increase their sporting performance through the likes of nutrition and supplementation.
Perfect. Excellent. So I think the best place to start actually is just what you said there about your thesis in creatine. It's one of the main questions I have here, so we may as well just jump straight in on that.
Perfect. So creatine obviously is the most researched supplement out there possible. It's the most researched supplement, and generally the rule of thumb, something that's super researched, most of the research kind of shows the same kind of thing. So we kind of know the buzzwords around it. Yes, creatine increases strength. Yes, brain kinesis, all those kind of things. All that creatine really helps them. However, where do we get creatine from? When's the best time to use it? And what's the best dosages? Stuff like that are really kind of brushed past because people kind of think just take creatine, just get it in you, and that's all you need to do. And that's not really 100% ideal. So what we did is we looked at when's the best time to take creatine and how much to take. And what the findings really showed, just a quick little example of what we did, we got 30 people, we split them into two groups, a placebo and a creatine group. We gave them 5 grams of creatine a day over the 30 days, and they took it post-workout. And what we did then is we compared like the placebo and the creatine groups and just looked at the findings. And what we found, what was super interesting, which really aligns with the other research out there, is that at 5 grams a day, there are no side effects to creatine. So the water retention, all that kind of the kidney damage, or kidney function, liver function, all those kind of things do not happen at 5 grams a day. And that's what is known in the industry as like a maintenance dosage. Whereas a loading dosage is kind of really popular in the olden days. Like that's kind of where the old science shows that we've got to take 20 to 25 grams a day for 7 days and then drop down to a maintenance dosage. However, the research shows now that you don't need to do that. 5 grams a day just from day one eliminates all of the negative side effects. However, you get all of the benefits from it. So you don't get any water retention, you don't get any excess, it doesn't affect your body composition in the slightest. So that was one of the big findings of it, that for 30 days, 5 grams of creatine a day didn't affect your body composition in the slightest. However, it improved your strength. So what we looked at peak power output, which is when you're working your hardest, what happens? And obviously your ATP PC stores are activated. That's where we get our energy from in a really super basic term, because our body can no longer oxidize carbohydrates or fat, so it needs to use something else as an energy source. And creating your ATP PC stores are what happens then. And then basically at that 5 grams a day post-workout, that is enough, that's perfect. So you're looking at like, say, most of us are going to get quite a decent amount of creatine from like your fish and your meats if you're a meat eater. However, the plant-based dieters out there, they're going to struggle a little bit to get creatine in. The cranberries do have a little bit of creatine in there. However, there's not enough. And plant-based diets, there's not enough out there to get your creatine in naturally through your food sources. So you're going to have to take them. So you're going to have to supplement them at 5 grams a day post-workout. Now, the post-workout thing, what was amazing, what's shown, not just in our research, but in all the other research out there that's been done, is that your muscle protein synthesis, which is what we're trying to create when we cause hypertrophy. We're trying to create muscle protein synthesis, which is a positive balance, which is going to create then, which is in a super simple terms, your muscle is going to recover and grow back bigger and stronger. Super simple. So your muscle protein synthesis with taking creatine post-workout is huge, is the bigger difference. So yes, getting creatine in at any point is great. However, if we're going to be optimal, which you guys out there who are looking at these sporting performance, and the thing about supplements are that supplements might give you a 1 or a 2% increase, but you guys out there that are super obsessed with sporting performance, whether you're professional athletes or you're trying to just become better, those 1 or 2% make a massive difference for you compared to the general public. It's not as big. So for you guys out there, post-workout, 5 grams a day, perfect. That's all you kind of need to increase your strength.
Okay, excellent. And when you were testing strength, what type of exercises were you looking at?
So we did a Cybex machine and we did flexion and extension. So it's basically a leg extension and a leg curl, basically, but strapped in. And we measured it in Newton meters. And basically we tested on day 1, all 30 people, sent them away, 15 with creatine, 15 without, did the exact same test again 30 days later. And every single person on creatine improved. A few of the people not on the placebo improved as well, but it was actually, in research, there's something called a significant distance. So it was significant, the increase was significant enough to publish to say that yes, there was a difference. So yeah, because obviously people train differently, and all we could do with nutrition wise was get them to keep a food diary and keep a check to make sure that everybody's kind of protein, creatine, nutritionally was about the same. So that's all we could do. We couldn't control all those kind of things, unfortunately. But what we did is we just kept a food diary to make sure. So Newton meters, which is what we measured in on the Cybex machine, flexion extension, and we just made sure. And basically, everyone that took creatine improved, and it was significant enough to actually say yes, it makes a difference.
Okay, geez, that's good, serious result. And as you were saying, it is probably it is the most researched supplement out there. So, I guess how could you break it down? How simple could you make it? Like, on a simple level, what does creatine do exactly?
So whenever we're working at our peak performance, our body needs to create an energy source.
Yeah.
So the more creatine we have in our body, the more we can create that energy source. So when you're working, like, say, really a maximal effort, which our results really showed that the harder, on the Cybex machine, basically, you work in velocity, and the slower the velocity, the harder it is to move. So as we were making it harder to move, really, really harder, the people with creatine that's where they were really shining, because when your body can no longer fuel itself with carbohydrates or oxygen or fat, the body needs to fuel itself with something, which is your ATP PC stores, which is your phosphate creatine. Okay. So the more creatine we have, that's when we kind of can work a little bit harder. Okay.
So would creatine then be beneficial for, let's say, someone who's involved in like an endurance sport as much as it would be in someone that's involved in like a high intensity sprinting sport, or is there differences there?
I would look, creatine, if you're taking it at 5 grams a day, has no negative side effects. So it's not something that you say this person should take and this person shouldn't take. However, if you've got like a more strength element in your sport, so say rugby, etc., or Gaelic football for you guys, what you were saying, that kind of thing, then yes, creatine is going to be more beneficial to you guys, because it's going to be because you're going to be working at that past 95% of your VO2 max. At that, you're going to have those short, sharp bursts of where you really need real energy. Whereas like when you're in a marathon, you're trying to keep your VO2 max and your lactate threshold and your heart rate very stable throughout the whole thing. But any sports that have like a short burst of energy, that's where the creatine is going to really make a difference.
Okay. And what you mentioned there about the maintenance dose, I was always kind of like against that, because in general I would say like you would think that it would increase naturally, but where did the maintenance dose, or not the maintenance dose, sorry, the bulking dose, where you
loading dose.
The loading dose.
Yeah.
Where did that come out of originally?
I think that what happened is, in the old days, people just kind of thought, let's flush our system with something, get our levels right up there, and then let's try and hold on to them with 5 grams a day. I think that would kind of make sense to me. Yeah. And still now, there is still research out there published that say that with a loading dose it does work. And of course it does. But then you get the negative side effects. So you will have listeners who are listening to this now who have taken creatine in the past before, and they'll say, oh, well, I put on water weight, or my kidneys hurt, or whatever the side effect may have been. However, all the research shows that the only people that get these side effects are the people that took the loading dose first and not the maintenance, just went straight onto a maintenance dosage.
Yeah. Okay, that makes sense. And then I guess you mentioned like cranberries. What, like, let's say if you're eating a good bit of meat on a daily basis, would you be getting in that 5 grams, do you feel, or for sport and performance?
Not for sport and performance, no. For the average member of the public,
yeah.
As long as your diet's varied and balanced and you're getting enough meat, enough fish, all that kind of stuff, sardines, tuna, all that kind of stuff, then yes, you're going to probably be okay. But for sport and performance, again, we're looking for that little extra, aren't we? We're looking for that. At the top level of sporting, those little percentages, those little snippets make a huge difference. So this is what we're talking about here.
Oh yeah.
And that's why they're called supplements at the end of the day. Supplements are called supplements because they're trying to supplement our diet. No one can rely on supplements because that's ridiculous. Supplements are there to supplement our diet. And we're trying to just get those little percentages. For the average member of the public, they're maybe not as important, but for sport and performance, when there's a lot on the line, that's when it kind of really matters.
Yeah, exactly. And then with it, I guess, how long does it take before the effects start kicking in?
Well, this is interesting. So there is research out there that shows like 5 to 7 days that you can get thingy. And originally what I wanted to do some kind of squat programming and testing every 7 days. But we decided that it was just too much to do. And we thought that maybe the difference in 7 days is possibly not going to be as great. But there is research out there that shows that 5 to 7 days in creatine will start to have some effect.
Okay.
And 30 days is probably... And the amazing thing is, there's two amazing things as well when we're looking at dosage and strategies like that, is that A, if you're taking 5 grams a day in maintenance dosage, there's no reason that you have to come off it at any point. Yeah. But B, there's no reason that you have to stay on it as well. Like, you can take creatine for a couple of months, hop off it and hop back on it again. You're not going to, the results are not like fabricated. It's not like a synthetic drug like say a testosterone or a HRT or something that we put in our body. It's not, the results aren't going to go away when we stop taking it. The results are basically just allowing our muscles to work harder and to work bigger and to work stronger in the weight room or on the training pitch, which then allows us to perform better. Those results are going to stay there. You don't only get them whilst you're on creatine.
Oh, okay. Oh, so they stick on even after that?
Because all we're doing is we're in the simplest of terms, we're giving our body the best chance possible to train a little bit harder, to lift a little bit more weight. And those results that we get from doing those, they're like secondary results. And those secondary results, they stay with you. They don't go away because the creatine's not in your body.
Yeah, okay.
Whereas when you're taking like a testosterone replacement or something like that, as soon as you come off that will then change. So
okay. And then I know before there was this, I remember hearing there was like, you'll have responders and non-responders. It doesn't sound like you had any issue with that in your study.
No, not in the slightest. I've read that definitely as well. And you've heard anecdotal evidence as well, but in the world of science, that's kind of, it just frustrates the shit out of me when people say, you know, like the anecdotal stuff like, oh, well, I tried this and it didn't do this, or I tried this. And it's kind of like, okay, thanks. But in our study, we didn't have one non-responder.
Okay, geez, that's good. That's excellent. So I guess moving from there, looking at creatine and looking at how that affects people, you were saying in your PhD you're looking into metabolic?
Yeah, so my PhD, what we're trying to do is metabolic biology. So basically, I'm super passionate about optimization, about how can we make the most out of something. So whether it be food, training, supplementation, whatever it is, no matter who you are in the world, if you want to get fitter, you can go out, do a few burpees and run, and you're going to get fitter. If you want to get stronger, you can lift a few weights, you're going to get stronger. If you want to get leaner, you can eat a little bit less food, and you'll get leaner.
Yeah, exactly.
But that's not optimizing. So, and the problem with our society is that all those things that I just listed then for the general public are probably a good thing. Yeah, if the average member of the public kind of went out and did a little bit more running, lifted a few more weights and ate a little bit less, that's a great thing. But that's kind of, in a non-arrogant sense, not what I'm really interested in. What I'm interested in is optimization. How can we get the top athletes in the world and make them a little bit better?
Yeah.
Or how can we get the people who are probably talented enough to be the top athletes in the world and turn them into the top athletes?
Yeah, okay. So what, to break it down in like in a bit more detail, what do you look at there and how are you testing that, and what are your methods or what kind of stuff are you looking at?
Well, I mean, talent ID is a super hard thing. It's probably not something to talk about today because we could go on forever about that. But just nutrition-wise, we spoke about this privately and had a nice conversation about it, is that nutrition-wise, there's a bubble around nutrition. So people kind of think, and there's a few like of the Instagram kind of personal trainers out there that have done a really good job of like bringing light to the fact that if you want to affect your body composition, you just have to go in a calorie deficit. It's super simple, and that's great. And for the average member of the public, that's great. However, what's happened now is that people automatically think about nutrition and think about that phase. Now, sport and performance and body composition are two totally different things. Like they're just totally different. They're different things for training, but they're different things for nutrition as well. So what we need to do is we need to discernate between the two, and we need to decide what is your primary goal. Now, just because something's your primary goal doesn't mean we can't achieve both things. So I have athletes who are getting stronger, fitter for their sport, but also improving their body composition. But that's a really secondary goal, and what we're doing is we're trying to optimize the first thing, and that secondary will happen.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what I'm interested in, is how can we find out your goal and how can we optimize that through sport and nutrition. So a big thing in the industry for me is your nutrition timing based around workouts and about sport and performance and about your game time, and also about your ratios, your carbohydrates to protein ratios, and your food with your timings then about what macronutrients to eat when.
Okay. So what do you want to dig into first?
Well, I mean, let's just work through a simple. We'll give a nice little overview for everyone back at home. So for you guys, I'm gonna talk now like we're talking to like the athletes at home now. Okay, so you guys that listen at home that are athletes, we need to look at everything needs to fit into your overall day. Okay, so it's all right saying eat this amount of carbohydrates post-workout, intra-workout, pre-workout, but they all have to fit into your total value throughout the day. Everybody has a score throughout the day. So, and for you guys out there that are athletes, you kind of season, I'm 100% sure it will be, I'm not like sucking eggs here with you guys, that It will be split into two. It'll be like a competition season and an off season. Okay. Now your off season is when you want to be doing all your body composition work, because your performance can afford to suffer slightly if it means that you can get yourself in the perfect shape, which means you're going to be able to move your body better when you're performing. Now, if you're trying to change your body composition during the actual performance season, we're going to come up against a few little problems. So ideally, in an ideal world, in the off-season is when we do all our body composition changes, we get you basically to a point when it comes to the season that all we're doing then is we're fueling your training sessions, fueling your performance, making you the best you can be throughout that, making you, all that matters throughout the season is game day. Yep. All that matters is that you perform the best you can, that you win, or that you do whatever you do on game day. So we're going to split those two up to. So basically, we're not going to talk about the body composition part because it's super simple. I'm not going to like take the mick out of anyone back home. Like, if you need to lose some weight or lose some body fat, you're going to calorie deficit. If you need to put some on, you're going to calorie surplus. If you're happy with where you are, you eat at maintenance levels. What we will talk about is how you find out those numbers. Okay, so there's a few things. So you'll have all heard of basal metabolic rate, which is BMR. That is basically how many calories a day you will burn just whilst you're asleep, just to stay alive, just to function, just for your body's most basic functions. That's your basal metabolic rate. Then you have something else called your metabolic equivalency, which is your MET scaling. Now, there's a cravat to that is that nowadays, with all the technology out there, this changes slightly. Because in what we would do, before everyone started wearing Apple Watches or Whoop bands or whatever that tells you how many calories a day you burn, although the Apple Watches are nowhere near as reliant as the Whoop bands are, like nowhere near. But let's just say, before we knew all that, you would have to MET scale your workouts for the day. So if you worked out, you'd have to look up how long you worked out for, your weight, and give that and find out the metabolic equivalency for that workout, and that will give you an amount of calories that you burn during that workout. Then what we would also have to do is look at something called a TDEE, which is your total daily energy expenditure. So that's how many calories a day just your lifestyle takes. So if you've got a job where you walk 10,000 steps a day, you're on your feet all day, or you're a professional athlete and you train all day or something, your TDEE is going to be a lot higher than somebody who just sits at a desk all day. So those three things, so you've got your BMR, you MET scale your workouts, you've got your TDEE for the days, all those three things then get added together, and that's your total amount of calories a day that you use. So regardless, then if you're looking at body composition, then we'll fool around with those numbers, depending on like, if we want to change our body composition, we want to lose something, we'll go in a deficit from that. If you want to increase weight, we're going to surplus from that. Now, sporting performance-wise, we need to get those numbers exactly perfect, because then what we do is we are fueling that exact. So in the season then, we know exactly how many calories a day we're burning, and we're fueling that exact. Then what we do for sporting performance, this is the interesting part, this is why I find super interesting anyway, is that now we look at your schedule. Because for me, the most important thing in your day is going to be your schedule, your workout schedule or your game day schedule. Then we plan your meals around that first. So it'd be like it depends. If you're trying to do an adaptive session, maybe like a zone 2 adaptive session, you may do that fasted. And all that's going to do then is that's going to maybe push your lactate threshold a little bit further, which means that we can then, when we're working out during a game, say like it's a rugby game or a Gaelic football game, when you're working at less than 70% of your VO2 max, our body can use fat oxidation as its primary energy source then. So if we can increase your VO2 max slightly on that, we can work a little bit harder. And all that's doing is it's saving carbohydrate for when it's needed. Because we can only store between 300 and 600 grams of carbohydrates in our body. But we can store like 6,000 grams of fat, so over 10 times more. So if we can utilize that fat at a really low intensity thing, then we're going to save carbohydrates for when they're needed.
Okay. Right, it's a lot to unpack there. Just as you were saying, when you say that you want to utilize fat in it, like how does someone go about doing that?
Well, everybody, no matter who you are, if you're working at under 65 to 70% of your VO2 max, can utilise fat oxidation as a primary energy source. That may just be walking down the street, depending on how fit you are or whatever. That may be just walking down the street. Now, that means that we can get our body to utilise fat as our primary energy source, which means that fat will be oxidising, and then that will be using that as an energy source to burn, to perform the exercise, to perform whatever we're doing. However, then, when we get above 70% or above 75%, depending on whether you're a trained athlete or whether you train fasted or not, our body can no longer rely on fat oxidation. It can't. Basically, what happens is our body can't oxidize the fat quick enough to get it into the bloodstream to use it as energy, because the heart rate's going so fast. We need energy quicker, and it can't do it. in a simple terms, fat is double the density of what carbohydrates are.
Yeah.
So it's just going to take longer. So, however, carbohydrates, you can utilize them from up to about maybe 90%, 95%. So when we're working, like soccer players, football players, etc., they're probably going to utilize fat as their primary energy source for most of the game.
Okay.
Depending on where they play and what position they are. So when we are basically then working between that 70 and 90%, it's kind of like the athletic zone. So we're going to utilize fat then as we're going to utilize carbohydrates then as our primary energy source. So that's then we need to start thinking about now how we're going to fuel that pre, intra, and post.
Okay.
So as I said before, we can only store between 300 and 600 grams of carbohydrates in our body as glycogen. Okay, so muscle glycogen is basically, to make it super simple, we eat carbohydrates, turn into glucose then gets turned into glycogen. Okay, so whenever somebody says muscle glycogen or blood glycogen or whatever, it's carbohydrates.
Yeah.
It's just them. It's just the academic term or whatever, the scientific term for carbohydrates. So let's not try and become anything we're not. We're talking about carbohydrates here.
Yeah.
Okay, so what I like to do is I like to start this process the night before. Okay, so what you want, all you want to do is you want to keep our athlete as close to, let's explain this super simple. Let's pretend that all your muscles have energy bars. Okay? All we're trying to do, and you fill those energy bars up with glycogen, carbohydrates. Yep. All we're trying to do is keep those energy bars as full as physically possible forever, which means they're going to be able to perform as to the highest standard they can because they're not going to get in as fatigued.
Yeah. Okay.
So that's all we're trying to do. So I would start that the night before, and then I'd be working out like grams of carbohydrates the night before, and then I always with athletes as well work on a 3-to-1 carbohydrate to protein ratio.
Okay.
So I will always I work off 1.2 grams of carbohydrates per kilogram of body weight, and then 0.4 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight, okay. which again works out a 3-to-1 ratio.
Okay. So when you were, I've actually 2 or 3 things I want to go into there. You mentioned fasting, trying to fast it. I'll go back to that in a second because I want to see what the benefits of that are or what the idea of it is. So for practically to put it, as you said there, you had the right. You were saying it was a 0.4. Is that what you said for?
0.4 grams of protein per kilogram.
Okay.
And then 1.2 grams of carbohydrates per kilogram.
Okay, so basically a person takes their body weight.
Yeah.
And they multiply it by these numbers, and then that's what they do night before.
Right. Okay. So there you go. So so that would be an ideal kind of night before meal.
Okay.
It would probably be an ideal breakfast meal.
Okay.
And it'd probably be an ideal post-workout meal, phase 1, and a post-workout meal, phase 2.
Phase 1 and phase 2.
Yeah, exactly. So what we need to look at here is you need to look at your macronutrients. So carbohydrates are super, and the reason why people get so confused about carbohydrates is they're super complex. Because there's really these 3 types of carbohydrates. Let's say 2 to make it easy. They're simple and complex, and then you've got fibre in there as well. But we'll kind of group fibre with complex, but
Perfect.
It's not particularly because there is a little bit more than 4 grams per. A little bit more than 4 calories per gram. But let's just group them together. So we've got simple and complex. Now, simple carbohydrates are higher in sugars. And what they do is whenever you eat sugar or take on sugar, your pancreas secretes insulin. Okay? Now, insulin, to make it super, super simple, okay? This is the way that I try and explain to all my clients because no one wants to hear exactly what insulin does. They want to hear how it's beneficial to them. Okay? Now, imagine that your body, again, all your muscles are energy bars. Okay. Now, insulin is basically a transporter, and it unlocks the key. Right? So it's a key. It unlocks the muscles. So the insulin carries around the glycogen, the carbohydrates gets transported in the blood. Okay.
Yeah.
Insulin, when it gets to a muscle, the insulin unlocks the muscle, and it flushes the glycogen into the muscle where it's needed. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, the problem with insulin, again, when people eat too much sugar and they're not active, is that if your muscle glycogen is already full and we've already got the 300 to 600 grams of carbohydrates in us, your body then can't do anything else with it. And that's when you start to store fat.
Yeah.
But we're not talking about these guys are trained athletes. We're talking about sport and performance athletes now. So what all the insulin's going to do for you is it's going to unlock your muscles and allow the blood glycogen to flush into muscle and turn into muscle glycogen, which is where we want it. Okay?
Perfect.
So that would then be, so basically our pre, intra and post phase 1 meals or workouts or whatever we're taking on are going to be higher in simple carbohydrates because we're trying to get that glycogen. You're trying to spike our insulin to try and get the glycogen into the muscles.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now phase 2 is slightly different. Phase 2 is where we probably have the same kind of numbers as what we had in phase 1, but we're going to take on a more complex carbohydrate because there's no need for that fast response because it's 2 hours after I've trained or whatever. Like say the phase 1's within 15 minutes, the phase 2's within 2 hours.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's like 2 post-workout meals, but there's one directly post-workout and then one like a couple of hours later.
Perfect.
The couple of hours one doesn't have to be fast-acting carbohydrates. In fact, it's probably better if it's complex carbohydrates because we don't need it there and then. We've replaced them straight away, and now we're just starting to kind of slow drip them.
Okay. So with the slower acting carbohydrates, that's not going to spike insulin as much then, is it?
No.
Okay.
It still will.
Yeah.
And even protein by itself has been shown to spike insulin slightly.
Okay.
Which is why people who do like a carnivore or ketogenic diet still can perform in some way, because there's still going to be some insulin excreted by the pancreas, which I know people out there won't kind of understand, they won't believe that, but that's just the truth. That's just what the research shows, that it's a very small percentage, but it does do.
It works. Okay, so that's interesting. So basically, if you take those numbers and kind of get an idea for yourself, you can start to get an idea of what the best or most optimal way of doing it is.
And then this is then where they have to fit into your total daily thing we worked about before. So it's no good saying like, let's make it super simple. Let's say we've got a 100k athlete. Yeah. Okay, just a nice easy round number. There's no point saying 40 grams of protein, 120 grams of carbs 4 times a day, which is probably pretty good. Yeah. But then you need to work out exactly where the BMR, TDE, and metabolic scale, what those 3 numbers added up. Add up those to it and then see what's left over, and then work out what's left over.
Yeah. When you say 4K, you mean a 4,000 calorie? Is it? What? You said a 4K athlete? Did I pick that
100k athlete.
Oh, 100k athlete.
Yeah.
Sorry,
so if you've got a 100k athlete, so then that would be on our figures what we spoke about before, 1.2 to 0.4. It'd be 120 grams of carbohydrates and 40 grams of protein.
Okay.
So, so that if we did that 4 times a day, breakfast, post-workout 1, post-workout 2, then nighttime meal, say for example. That's great, but that's only 500 grams of carbohydrates and 200 grams of protein.
Okay.
But so then what we need to do then is we need to work out from our overall scores, what we worked out before, where do they then fit into them?
Okay.
Basically, we can afford to eat more meals that then add up to our total daily energy expenditure.
And would that be, let's say if you have a game on a Sunday, would your structure stay the same for the whole week, or is it changing as the week goes on?
No, I think that ideally, because we've done all the body composition work in pre-season, that the body. Right, okay, so let's look at this in like the super simplest way. The body likes similarities. Okay, the body likes to be regular at stuff. It likes routine. It likes to eat the same things every day because it knows how it's going to react, and it starts to become very efficient to reacting with those things. So we don't like things that are going to knock us off our kind of our zone or knock us off our pathway. And it's the same thing in the morning of a game. Okay, yeah. So you need morning of a game is the time when a lot of people mess up. Maybe if you work with triathletes, they mess up more than anybody else. But for whatever reason, you have to eat foods that you know how your body reacts to, and that are easy for your body to digest and break down. Like pre-workouts are one that we've had so many problems with in the past, where people have got a new pre-workout and decided to take it on the day of a game rather than in training, and they've come up with all these like stomach cramps or whatever problems. I'm sure you can all imagine what kind of problems they've come up with. And it's during a game and you're like, well, what have you done different? What have you done different? Have you got a bug or is something done different? Yeah. Well, I've taken this. Thanks.
Yeah. That's the thing. Like changing things too much. Anyone that I'm working with now, I'll kind of avoid the nutrition thing. But when we are prepping for a game, a lot of the time it's load management stuff, getting things right. So they're not training like the day before a game and doing loads and loads the day before a game. And it's getting the simple things right. A lot of people I find I don't know, is it nervousness or what it is, but sometimes they're looking for something to, like last minute to change.
No, it's the looking for an edge. Because there's so much to go. It's a big business now, sport. And, people put food on the table by playing sport. And if you can think of, if you're a little bit nervous or a little bit apprehensive and you're looking for something that may give you a little edge, and Johnny over there takes this pre-workout before a game and it works for him, you think, I'll give me a fire over that. Yeah. Which is fine training wise. Go and try it in the week and see how it works out, or try it pre-season, see how it works out, but don't try anything on a game. And food's super important for that. So, so let's look at fruit, for example. fruit is super easy to digest. Okay, your body will digest it super easily. But say something like oats or something like that, your body won't digest it as much. So you need to look at what your body can digest and how you can deal with it quickly. One thing as well for athletes that you guys listening out there probably will be screaming at us from home, will be like, at half time, you might not feel like eating. When I used to play football, I didn't feel like eating at half time. And that's why there'd be always, in the olden days, oranges or whatever at half time, because they were super easy to eat and everyone could get them down you. And it's got the simple carbohydrates in the fructose, which is great. Because obviously, another little pointer out there, if we're having a half-time meal and we're going to try and split up then our fructose and our glucose. So fructose is naturally occurring sugars in fruit. Glucose is it's just sugars. So what we're trying to do then is we're trying to get a ratio of about 60% fructose and 40% glucose in our drinks. So we have our isotonic drinks, which may be like, to make your super isotonic drinks at home, it might be like 8 parts water, 2 parts solution. Of those 2 parts solution, it might be 60% fructose, 40% glucose.
Okay.
And that would be like an ideal thing.
Okay.
But again, I think we're going to revisit this in another couple of weeks and chat more a little bit about like recovery processes and maybe some isotonic kind of drinks and that kind of thing, because we could go on forever about that. But yeah, so normally kind of the good kind of isotonic drinks will already have that.
Okay.
So I use isotonic drinks with my athletes a lot. So with my triathletes, I might use like Soreen whilst we're on the bike or something, because they might be hungry at this point. They've already swam. They've already been going 4 or 5 hours. If they're in an Ironman, they might want to eat. So something that's for them, some bananas or some jam, some Soreen, something that's easily digestible and that they can do. But I would never do that with somebody who I've never worked with before. In the first time, I'd let them go and figure it out, kind of what they work well with. So you guys should know now at home. Let's make it super simple. You guys should know at home now what carbohydrate sources and what protein sources you can eat and not feel heavy afterwards. Like, I know it's a super basic term, but feeling heavy afterwards means that your body is kind of struggling to digest it. It's sitting on your stomach. You have that saying, everyone says that saying, it's sat on my stomach for ages. Well, it's because your body's just struggling to break it down a little bit. Our nighttime meal, that's a great thing.
Yeah,
that's an amazing thing. But we don't, sporting performance, during the actual game, we're trying to get things that can get digested and get in our bloodstream as quick as possible. Fire up, get the blood glycogen into the muscle glycogen as quick as possible. Let's kick those energy bars up.
Okay.
Nice and high.
Yeah, well, I was in when I was working in the States for a small while, I was with a basketball team. It was a Division 1 team, and they had all these little kind of tips and tricks of what they were doing. Some things, like they were heavy on foam rolling. I'm not heavy on foam rolling. There's some things that were probably just I
never understand why people foam roll pre-workout, because you're trying to cause hypertrophy during a workout. So why are you trying to break down muscle tissue before the workout? It makes no sense to me.
There's a lot of we won't get into it now. There's a lot of things on it, but with them, one of the things that they did with a basketball player, obviously they're going in and out so often, is that they used it was a sugary gel, a glucose gel.
Energy gel, so like a running gel.
Yeah.
So but the problem with them again is that we've had so many people just grab them on the morning of the race and get stomach cramps and all that kind of stuff because they're not used to them. I mean, I personally think they taste terrible. I'd rather just have a C3000 drink over here or whatever they are, because it's just something that's super fast acting in sugary. Like most of our kind of sports drinks, our isotonic drinks, are about 40 grams of carbs.
Okay.
Powerade, I think, is about 40 grams of carbs, 40 grams of sugar, all sugar. That's fine. That's fine. However, in basketball, if you're only off the court for 2 minutes, drinking 500 ml of Powerade in that 2 minutes is probably too much. So all they're doing is they're taking the parts of carbohydrates of that and condensing it into a liquid gel.
Yeah.
And taking that on board. So it's basically pure sugar in a liquid gel.
And is it? I've heard this thing. I don't know if it's a myth or whatever it is, but it's they just put it in your mouth. If you just by putting it in your mouth, you get some release of it.
No. So what's big in the industry at the moment is mouth rinsing. But that is more with caffeine and stuff like that. So when athletes say they take so many micrograms of caffeine post workout or post kind of game, they don't sit there with a cup of black coffee drinking black coffee. That's a mouth rinse, like a mouthwash, caffeine mouthwash.
Okay.
That's how you would take that on board.
What's the idea?
It's just that basically your receptors in your mouth are going to take that caffeine on, and it's going to go more direct into your bloodstream quicker.
But for post-workout though, why would you want it?
We wouldn't take it post-workout. We're talking pre-workout now. So when somebody does it pre-workout or at half-time or whatever, Or if you actually like watch the Premier League football now, you'll see when they're coming onto the pitch, somebody might be gargling something and spit it on the floor, and you might think, oh, it's water. More than likely, it might be a caffeine mouse rinse. Really? Although caffeine was banned in the Premier League for a little bit as a performance enhancing drug. I'm not quite sure whether that is where it is now.
Yeah, okay, that's interesting. So caffeine, it's so true though, because when you drink caffeine in the morning, the second it hits your mouth, you're wide awake. So I can see how that would work. Now, to bring it back to something, I didn't want to cut you off at all because you were flying through things. Training fasted. Is there a benefit to it? When would you use it? What's the idea?
Okay, so this is going to split opinions massively. But let's not give any opinions. Let's just talk about what the science shows. So the science shows that for body composition, fasted cardio, let's call it fasted cardio because that's what people kind of hashtag, don't they? Fasted cardio and stuff. For body composition, fasted cardio makes absolutely no difference for body composition.
Okay.
What matters is the total amount of calories that you burn throughout a day and the total amount of calories you eat throughout a day. Your balance, your energy balance. That's what matters. Whether you do the cardio fasted or not, it makes no difference. However, what fasted cardio can do, or fasted training can do, is it can push your threshold a little bit further back, which allows you to work a little, because your body will adapt to working fasted.
Yeah.
Your body's amazing. Our bodies are amazing things, and they adapt to whatever situation we put them in, it will adapt eventually. So if we can do like zone 2, you guys at home will be used to the term zone 2. So zone 2 training is where you can kind of still talk a little bit. You're working at a certain percentage of your body, of your heart rate, but it's like kind of the basis. It's like the foundation of fitness is zone 2 training. So it'd be like almost like your marathon kind of pace.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So zone 2 training at fasted in the morning, what that might do is it might make your body adapt to being able to work at that load using fat oxidation as an energy source. Which means that if we're a soccer player, say, when we're jogging around, our body will be adapted to being able to utilise fat to fuel that. Which means that those 300 to 600 grams of carbohydrates that we can store are being saved so that when we need them, we can use them.
Okay.
So basically, imagine it like a what's the thing? The timers, like a sand timer.
Okay. Yeah.
So your sand timer, the sand is your carbohydrates. Okay. If we can plug that sand timer out whilst we can use fat as an energy source, as soon as we need to take that out again and use the sand, there's going to be more sand left. Okay. Super simple.
Okay. So would you like, first off, what you said there, stress and adaptation, that is my absolute, the main thing that I push with anything that I'm doing, especially with clients who are coming back from injury and like struggling with recurring injuries, is that a lot of the time people just aren't pushing hard enough to stimulate any bit of adaptation. So I can imagine it works with every body system. So that's why I'm saying with fasted, then if you are eating, or if you are training fasted, let's say if you're doing a high intensity session, or if you're doing...
Yeah, you see there. So high intensity, I wouldn't be doing fasted high intensity.
Okay.
So there's a problem with training, is that, how can I word this? So you don't want to train your body to work slow.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, so if you're training high intensity, you don't just want to just be slugging through the movements, because you are then really training your body to do the movements but slow.
Yeah.
Okay, so fasted training will come in like a zone 2, like an easy, like methodical pace. So it might be like a slow 10k run, or a slow 20k bike ride, or a slow jog, whatever it might be, swim, whatever. It'd be a slow thing, so that when you're replicating, let's be honest. So give me a sport what your listeners will play at home.
Gaelic football, hurling.
Okay, so Gaelic football, similar to like kind of the soccer kind of principles, football kind of principles.
Yeah,
so let's replicate those things. So when what we're trying to do is, when you're a centre half, whatever, and when you're like walking around, jogging around, manipulating the situation, kind of following the ball, keeping everything stable, that's when we want to be utilising fat. So we need to manipulate our body to do that in training. So it'd be a slow jog, would be our fasted.
Okay.
However, we don't want to go into high intensity work at that, because again, whenever we go above 75% of our VO2 max, our body can no longer rely on fat oxidation because it can't do it quick enough. Yep. It needs then glycogen to fuel it.
Okay. I see what you mean. So you're training it to become more efficient at that zone 2.
Exactly.
How do you train it to become more efficient at high intensity then? Is there a way?
What without carbohydrates?
Just like, let's say fasting is one technique to use. Yeah. Is there any other techniques that you can?
Yeah. Well, the simple basis of kind of training in general, isn't it? So like fartlek training example for football and stuff is prime example of that. But you would never do that fasted.
Yeah, okay.
Because you are listening to the body. What we're hoping then is that as soon as we reach our lactate threshold, our body can recover quicker.
Yeah.
The prime example of that kind of thing, and I'm sorry to go off on a little tangent here, but it's Paula Radcliffe when she broke the marathon world record. Okay, I know 2 of the guys that were on her team. Now, what they did is they worked out where her VO2 max was, what her lactate threshold running pace was. Basically, so your lactate threshold running pace is what you can hold. Your lactate threshold is where you can hold off without letting lactate take over and your body breaks down. So that's the threshold, basically the maximum you can work before lactate takes over and you break down.
Yeah.
So what they did is with Paula Radcliffe, they knew that her lactate threshold and her running pace at that, they basically knew that if they could fuel her body, i.e. keep up glycogen between 300 and 600 grams during the race, that she could run at a certain pace without the lactate taking over, that she would break the world record. So basically they went into that race knowing that as long as they fueled her right and there was no outside kind of influences, she was going to break the world record then, because they already knew that what her lactate threshold was.
Okay.
So this is what we do with fartlek training. So with fartlek training, we work as hard as we can till we break that lactate threshold, then we cover again.
Yeah.
And we go again.
Yeah.
And that's kind of for high intensity.
Okay, Jesus, yeah, that's nice. So it does come back to when you're looking at the techniques for that, it's more of the intra performance.
Exactly. Well, it'd be start the night before. For somebody with a marathon, it may even start 2 or 3 days before, because you may be almost trying to be. You can be a little bit too clever with stuff like this, but you can try and fill them up and then work out exactly how many grams of carbohydrates they've used that day, then fill them up again.
Okay, like carb loading, is it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, that's kind of. Yeah. Yeah,
why are you doing that?
Because that's kind of a term that just gives people a free license to eat as many carbohydrates as physically possible, which is not what we want to do, because we don't want to spill glycogen over, do we?
No, yeah.
When we're carbo loading, what we want to do is we want to work out your grams of carbohydrates that you need per day, and then maybe add a little bit more to make sure that our digestion rates or whatever we're doing to anything added extra, we're not going to kind of chop into those stores. But I don't like the term carbohydrate loading, because you say something, right, we're going to carbohydrate load for 3 days, and they'll just eat 1,000 grams of carbohydrates a day for 3 days, and then they'll wonder why the pancreas is not secreting as much insulin, because it can't keep up with the demands.
Okay, so would you get to a point if you did carb load for too long before, not that you would run out of insulin exactly, but
well, no, let's think about diabetes in the Western world is a huge problem. Okay, and we're not talking about diabetes that when you're born with. Talking about diabetes onset diabetes when we're an adult, or from children to adult, or whatever, what we cause ourselves. Okay. Now, what happens here is that we are eating so many grams of carbohydrates or sugar, example, that our body cannot keep up with those demands. Our pancreas cannot excrete enough insulin to keep up with those demands. So what it's going to do is it's just going to say, "I'm fighting a losing battle. Screw you. I'm not even going to bother anymore." And now you're diabetic.
Yeah. Yeah, okay.
So yeah, if you eat too much carbohydrates for a prolonged amount of time, in fact, I would go as far as to say that if every single human being on this planet ate 1,200 grams of carbs a day for a prolonged amount of time, we'd all be diabetic.
Yeah.
All our pancreas, our bodies would just say, do you know what, I can't do this.
Okay.
Put something in me that's going to do it for me.
Is there a way of optimizing that then, of pushing, pulling back, pulling back?
Yeah, but so athletes are an amazing breed, because we can do things with athletes that we would never do with the average human being. And this is why I try and promote sugars and simple carbohydrates with athletes pre, intra, and post phase 1, because our body is screaming out for that as quick as possible. So that's why we're trying to spike our insulin levels. With a member of the public who's concerned about body composition, we wouldn't do that. Even with a member of the public, they might have one post-workout meal which may be slightly higher in simple carbohydrates, but they wouldn't have the other 3 that an athlete would have.
Yeah.
2 or 3.
Okay. Right. Nice. Geez, that's a lot of stuff to unpack for people. Now, I guess.
I know, yeah.
They can listen to it twice. I guess the one point that I really want to touch on is because there is a couple of populations of people that listen to this podcast, and a lot of them are GAA players, hurling, football, and handball, and camogie, I should say. And then the other half are people that are involved in endurance events.
Okay.
So what I wanted to go into a small bit of detail on, or just if you were able to provide some information on fueling for an endurance event. Now, I know we covered that a bit earlier on, but just if we were to make it as simple as possible, how could you make it as simple for someone who doesn't really have an idea about nutrition?
Okay, super simple would be, for every hour that you're participating in an event, take between 25 and 35 grams of carbohydrates. Yeah, let's just make it so like those numbers are not. Okay, so when we're talking about Mr. Average, there's no Mr. Average in the world. However, if you stick within 10 grams of that, you're probably going to be about right.
Okay.
So for the average endurance athlete, if you're taking on, like, say, between 25 and 35 grams of carbohydrates per hour that you're working out, let's say the Ironman, for example, maybe have an 8-hour race. So we're trying to start the race with the 600 grams, between 300 and 600 grams of carbohydrates. And then our post-workout meal directly after is trying to replenish anything we've lost to 300 to 600 grams of carbohydrates. However, in between there is 8 hours, which, your carbohydrates may last how long? Who knows?
Yeah.
Who knows how long? So what we're trying to do then is every hour we're trying to tick over. We're just trying to top them up. We don't want to get to a point where we need them. We don't want to get to a point where we're thirsty. We don't want to get to a point where we're hungry. Because if we get to that point, we're already fighting a losing battle. We're trying to keep on top of it. So I would always say to my athletes, like, after you finish your swim or whatever, so let's talk time frame to make it easier. So at 45 minutes in, evaluate, do I need to take something on board now? The answer is probably yes. Okay. So let's take something on now. Let's stay ahead of the curve. Again, so we spoke about before, this is super individual with somebody with the types of food. It may be an isotonic drink, it may be a sports gel if you like the sports gels because they're super easy to get 40 grams of carbs in and they take 4 seconds.
Yep.
It may be that you like real food, it may be that you're on a bike and you've got a satchel and you've got a banana and some jam in your pocket.
Okay.
Whatever it may be, that's up to you and what you enjoy. Because let's be honest, if we're doing an event that lasts 8 hours and you can get a little bit of enjoyment during that event, let's take it. Let's take it. Let's take that little bit of enjoyment. But it's got to be something that your body can digest and your body can take on. But the key to this is to not let it get to a point where we're chasing our tails. Not let it get to a point where we're already fighting that losing battle. So I would always say 45 minutes in, let's see how we go. Maybe 25 to 35 grams of carbs, super fast acting, super easy to digest. And then let's evaluate again every 45 minutes, every hour. Let's evaluate. Let's keep evaluating. Whatever, put something on you, because these guys who are good athletes will have a timer on, have something on, have a watch on, whatever. Let's keep evaluating. Let's not let our body tell us, right, come on, we fucked up here. Let's get something in us.
Yeah.
Let's tell our body, right, now it's time to take something on before we need it.
Okay. So you're really planning in advance for that type of stuff. And the thing is, like as I was saying, I can see definitely how that would work. As you were saying, Ironmans, marathons. Now, one thing, it's like a very niche, I guess, kind of a market. For some reason, a lot of people who are doing ultra events have jumped on board with me this year, which I'm delighted to have them on, and they're such good clients to work with because they just have the mindset to keep going for everything. With that, though, their events are 24 to 48 hours. Yeah. Is there you stick to that same principle, would you?
Yeah, I would. If there's anyone out there who gets in touch with you and wants to give me a shout, I'm happy to have a chat. But I would have to look at a little bit more research about protein bases in this. Because for carbohydrates, all we're doing, guys, I can't stress this enough. Let's pretend we've got a 600 gram, 300 to 600 gram energy bar. That's what our body is. All we're trying to do is we're trying to keep that topped up with energy, carbohydrates, glucose, glycogen, as much as we can. Keep on top of that. Now, the protein thing, I'm not sure, thinking about it, that we maybe even need to take any protein on. To be honest, I would think we probably don't need to. I think we could probably be okay just with keeping that glycogen topped up. And obviously, we'll speak next time that we come in, we'll talk more about hydration, because hydration is a big thing, which is massively overlooked. And we'll talk about how we, as athletes, can check that how much, a lot of hydration is planning. So we should start to know how much we are going to lose, how much we're going to sweat, how much hydration, how dehydrated we're going to get within every hour we work out. So if it's an ultramarathon runner who's 24-hour race, they should be able to work out over an hour how dehydrated they're going to become. Times that by 24 hours, and then what we would do then is every 45 minutes that we're checking on our carbohydrates levels, we would then add in that hour's worth of fluid as well. Okay,
yeah. So that's definitely something that we'll have to dig into. There's no point going into it now. We'll be here all day. All right, so that's excellent. I love that idea of you have to keep it for every hour that you're working out. It's between 20 and 30 grams of carbohydrates.
I would say. Again, it's weight dependent, but yeah, the average person, if they're going to use between 20 and 30, you're going to be fine. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. You come at me and send me your weight or whatever, and I'll happily work out for you exactly what you want to do. But yeah, the average person between 20 and 30 grams is going to be totally fine. Now, let's just reiterate that point: is that anything in life, it's easier to prepare. Prevention is going to be a lot easier. That's with your sports mobility and your injury kind of thing. If we can prevent an injury happening, same as if we can prevent hitting that wall, it's a lot easier than recovering from it. If you hit that wall whilst you're doing an ultramarathon, with the best of intentions, you're pretty screwed.
Yeah.
You don't want to have to fight against anything else apart from the mechanics of doing the run.
Yeah.
So let's prevent that from happening and stay aware of it and prevent it from happening before it happens.
Okay, good. I love that idea because that's the exact same. Prevention is so much better than cure. And getting the knowledge around it, and I guess it's really about practicing as well. It's not just about
100%
waiting for the day of the game. And
no, but it's 100%. And the thing is as well, everyone's numbers are pretty similar, but the way that they're going to take those on board is going to be super different depending on how they digest food, what they enjoy doing, how their body reacts, timings, what they're like in the kitchen, how they're good at preparing, if they just stop off at the shop on the way to the game, or if they have a chef that prepares the food, or whatever. It's all different. However, the numbers are going to be pretty similar. Okay,
that's good. Now, I know we were talking about going into like another podcast on recovery and the types of food and all that, so I will leave that till that other podcast. I'm just looking through notes here, if anything did pop up. I guess actually one of the main ones is myths and misconceptions around sports nutrition. Okay. What are your biggest, as you say, grind your gears, you said before?
Yeah. Bit of old school there. So my biggest thing is around sports nutrition is that sports nutrition is totally different to general public nutrition.
Yeah.
So body composition nutrition, I will always call body composition nutrition general public nutrition. People who are trying to dictate the way they look through nutrition. Okay, sporting performance is totally different to that. Yeah, you should not. I'm not saying you cannot, but you should not be trying to perform at your optimal whilst in a calorie deficit.
Okay, yeah.
It just doesn't. It makes no sense. Like what we're trying to do is we're trying to be, if anything, in a slight surplus. Even what we're trying to do is we're trying to give our body the best chances physically possible of being successful, of performing optimally. And in a calorie deficit, that's not as possible. We can talk, if there's any athletes out there who are in a season phase, but they do need to change their body composition, there is ways around manipulating all your food around your workouts, which you can still increase sporting performance by doing that. But again, it's not optimal, but it is possible.
Yeah, that's it. You're looking at that. As you said at the start, there's a trade-off. You either go for, there's a big, whatever's possible might not be the optimal way of doing it. But for a lot of people, though, I guess it's kind of just getting an idea, getting an education around it first, and then when they start to really get into it or dive into their sport that bit more, then, or with the performance side of things, you're looking for the optimal, and you're, I think, anyway.
100%. What really frustrates me as well about nutrition at the moment is all this kind of ketogenic, low carb kind of thing. So we won't get into too much of it. If you guys were to follow me on Instagram, you'd see how I feel about that, because that's something that for sporting performance, whenever you get above 75% of your VO2 max, I've said this before when we were just explaining about nutrition, whenever you get above 75% of your VO2 max, your body cannot use fat oxidation as a primary energy source. It cannot. Basically what happens is your body cannot break down that fat oxidation process quick enough to fuel what's going on. So without the muscle glycogen and blood glucose, it cannot happen. So all you athletes out there that are taking on doing a ketogenic diet or a carnivore diet, yes, for body composition, it's going to obviously ketogenic diet is going to work for body composition, because all you're doing is you're taking away a third of your food choices, so it's going to put you in a calorie deficit. Okay. And for anti-inflammatory, if you've got inflammatory diseases, there's a lot of research out there that shows that taking away simple carbohydrates and some complex carbohydrates help with that.
Okay.
Help me as an anti-inflammatory.
Okay.
So there is a lot of research out there that shows that. But if we're primarily looking at sporting performance, anything between 75 and 95% of our VO2 max, higher intensity sports, we're going to struggle to fuel it without carbohydrates.
Perfect. Excellent. Serious, Mike. And the detail that you went into there is unbelievable. I think we're just coming up on the hour mark here, now we're close to it. What I love to do at the end of a podcast is I kind of like to give a kind of a wrap up of the main things we talked about. Now, we were discussing creatine dosage, we were talking about timing, we were talking about carbohydrate to protein ratio, we were talking about, I'm just looking through here, everything else like training fasted, insulin, optimizing that. Would you be able to give me a 30-second wrap up of how does a sport or field athlete, let's say, quickly fuel for their sport at a basic level, because they can go back and get all the details. Yeah. How does an endurance athlete, and then should you be taking creatine if you're performing?
Okay, right. So let's have a little go. Okay, guys. So if you're a field athlete and you're trying to increase your sprint performance, you need to look at your carbohydrates to protein ratio. So we're looking at a 3-to-1 carbohydrate to protein ratio. We're looking at 1.2 grams of carbohydrates per kilogram of body weight and a 0.4 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight. We're going to do that morning, noon and night. We can split our post-workout meals into 2 meals, one with the simple carbohydrates, one with the complex carbohydrates. Simple carbohydrates only go before, during workouts. Complex carbohydrates take too long to digest, so we leave them till later on in the day.
Perfect. Excellent. That's it. And then when you're taking on creatine, you're looking at 5 grams.
Yeah, 5 grams a day post-workout.
Post-workout. It doesn't matter what time you take it at, like is it as soon as possible post-workout?
Well, what I'm hoping now everyone at home is going to do is go and have a post-workout meal or shake with a higher glycemic index and a bit of protein, and throw your creatine in with that.
Okay. Excellent. Right, that's I think we've covered everything that we needed to cover there today. We'll definitely be doing, if you're up for it, I'd love to do another podcast.
Yeah, definitely.
And go into a good bit more detail on hydration and recovery nutrition, because we don't want to fit it all in one. And I think everything that you covered there is practical, it's applicable, like people can take it and do what they want with it. And as always, guys, I would say if you have any questions, any specific questions on this, I always say on Instagram that nutrition is not my forte. It's not my area of expertise by any means. So reach out to Mike. Mike, what is the best place to get in contact?
Just on Instagram, I guess it would be at Mike Nico. I think that's where I'm more active than anything else. So we try and put up fitness tips, at least 2 fitness tips a week, at least 2 nutrition informations a week, and a few daft training reels as well.
Perfect. Thanks a million, Mike, for jumping on. It was an excellent episode. I really enjoyed it. And we have so much more to talk about, so I'll definitely be keeping in contact. Have you anything to leave with anyone before we
No, I'm happy, guys. I feel like we got through a lot. Like I say, we probably got on a bit of a tangent some places and went off a little bit, so don't be scared to listen to it twice or pause and replay it if you need to. Cheers. Thanks, everyone.
All right, guys. We'll talk to you all again next week. Have a good one.